Hey, what's going on, guys? CJ here. So, I'm doing this kind of a thing. I know last year a lot of folks, going into Avengers Infinity War, were kind of doing the Marvel movie marathon, but I don't know, I never did any of the Marvel movie marathons in theaters and stuff, and I figure with Avengers Endgame coming out, I pretty much go back and watch the movies again and kind of give some new thoughts, so to speak, on them and such. I just finished the Phase 1 movies. And no, it's interesting in how watching even the later movies and recently Captain Marvel, a lot of stuff in Phase One starts clicking even more, and you also start appreciating even some of the movies that were just okay. You know, I mean, Iron Man One. I distinctly remember 2007, San Diego Comic Con. Um, I was in Hall H, and I saw the sizzle reel for Iron Man, and I was just blown away. Like I knew it was going to be a special movie, and rewatching Iron Man One, it's funny because one of the biggest things in that movie was the whole thing with Shield and the joke about the long running name, and and this is kind of like a kind of continuity error, so to speak, because when you look at Captain Marvel, which is before Iron Man, you have everything about Shield, 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 Shield. But then in Iron Man 1, Coulson is saying pretty much the full out Shield name. Now, some people will say continuity error and stuff. I know some people will find a way to explain around it and stuff. Not a big deal, but it's just one of those little things that quirks it's like funny. But it's also interesting about that film is that it holds up despite the third act, and I think the third act is okay. It's Obadiah Stane basically is Ironmonger. You kind of start appreciating the fact that like all of Iron Man's villains are corporate villains. There's nothing too particular about it and stuff. But it still holds up. It's a really, really good movie, and like I said, Robert Downey knocked it out of the park. Two of the most underrated, two of the most like probably a lot of folks really don't particularly like, and I wouldn't classify them as bad movies. Let me make that perfectly clear. Iron Man 2 and Incredible Hulk. Those are two movies that are actually, despite the issues that those two movies have, they're not bad movies. They're not legit bad movies. They're actually okay movies in the grand scheme of things. I feel, for me as a person that likes world building and the lore of the MCU and stuff, I love Incredible Hulk for them kind of taking elements from the Ultimate Comics with Banner pretty much doing the Gamma stuff that kind of with the super soldier serum and all that stuff, and just boom, he becomes a Hulk as a byproduct of that. And the whole thing with Blonsky and General Thunderbolt Ross, I thought everything worked along those lines. And I start realizing the fact that I think a lot of people weren't fond of Incredible Hulk because you come from Iron Man, which was this happy-go-lucky, even though it was serious at times, movie. You have Incredible Hulk, which is just somber across the board, and you might have like maybe three or four scenes that you chuckled a bit, but for the most part, it was like it was a very somber film, and it was like pretty much a 180 from what we got from Iron Man. So I understood why people were pretty much very lukewarm on that, so to speak. Iron Man 2 is also a case study in pretty much shooting yourself in the foot a little bit for the sake of progressing what you're overall trying to tell in your story. Because think about it like this: you had the Vanko storyline, which was actually pretty interesting, and it got sidelined for the sake of pushing the Avengers stuff and Tony Oz stuff. Like think about the fact that even the Justin Hammer stuff was actually pretty good, and Hammer and Vanko and stuff. But it felt like there's a chunk of the movie where it goes straight into Avengers exposition. And it's kind of one of those for better or worse kind of things, because for better in the fact of it's actually interesting in building this lore of the MCU, but for worse in the fact of it pretty much pushed the Hammer and Anton Vanko stuff to the background. So, but the thing of it is too, at the same time, you get Don Cheadle as Rhodey, and that whole line with him in the Senate kind of saying, I'm here, let's get over it, let's do this and stuff. And it was kind of funny that kind of symbolized like, hey, look, I took over for Terrence Howard. I'm here. Get over it. Let's keep this moving. And it works. That line works. The whole Senate hearing, the whole idea of like Tony saying, "Oh, there's no tech. This tech isn't going to be available," and then boom, we got Vanko out here with pretty much the same type of tech. Which, again, going into the MCU lore, it shows that like, yo, Tony Stark and the tech and all this stuff is starting to progress the world even more. It was kind of going back to what Vision said in Civil War about the whole idea of, since Tony Stark came into the fold, all these things have happened. Granted, Captain Marvel notwithstanding, that kind of jump started stuff, but it's whatever. But yeah, Iron Man 2 was definitely, I think it was like I said, it was an okay movie and stuff. I mean, let's be real. When it got to the finale with the drones and stuff, I was hype. It's kind of interesting that they combine Crimson Dynamo and Whiplash into like one character, especially on the design front, because we get Whiplash on the Monaco racetrack, and then on the other side of it, in the finale, we get the kind of like the Crimson Dynamo type armor with the Whiplash whips and stuff. It was kind of one of those finales where it was like the fight was okay, but it was kind of anticlimactic, so to speak. It was like, oh, okay, well, there's that. But look, Sam Rockwell was dope as Just a Hammer, and I don't know, the movie worked to me. Am I saying it's definitive must watch? Not really, but it's one of those movies that, again, it's not a bad movie. It's just one of those, like, it happened. It has some good nuggets and stuff. The fact that it takes place concurrently with Incredible Hulk, because Stark with the Hulk stuff in the background, and also on the map, Wakanda's on the map, which kind of was like the huge Easter egg. Stark making this new this new kind of like, I guess, about to say energy, pretty much the new thing, pretty much the new I guess I'm trying to find a word here, pretty much the new item that he made to kind of make the new arc reactor, because the old arc reactor was killing him and stuff. The new element that basically, sorry about that, the new element that basically, healed him from his palladium poisoning and stuff. I remember the novel of Iron Man 2 that was like vibranium, and that was kind of what everybody ran with online, and then, we get Captain America First Avenger, and it retconned it to where it's like, oh no, it's not vibranium. Vibranium is supremely rare, which we'll find out in Black Panther. But, overall, like I said, those two movies they're not bad movies. They're just okay movies and stuff. They're serviceable. They do their job, and that's it. They get in and get out, and that's it. Thor, to me, was interesting because out of all the Phase 1 movies, Thor was the one that I was kind of curious how they were going to do it, because the Thor mythology was always, Thor is Donald Blake, and then, taps the hammer down, boom, taps his cane down, boom, he transforms into Thor. So I was always curious how they were going to do that dichotomy, and they did it in a sense of Thor, is who he is and stuff. He gets, stripped of his powers, goes down to Earth, and he's still Thor. It's just, he doesn't have his powers. But the movie overall was actually pretty interesting. You get Tom Hiddleston as Loki, fucking nailed it from jump. Anthony Hopkins, Rene Russo. The Warriors 3 was good, even though in the grand scheme of the MCU, they were pretty much criminally underused, especially Sif. Particularly, like in that Ragnarok, the Warriors 3 was just, whatever. But the movie did a good job of establishing Asgard and, sort of magic, even though Thor does the whole magic and science is the same thing kind of deal, which is interesting in and of itself, kind of like the, what's the word, I don't know, I forgot the word, but, science and magic are the same thing. We get the Hawkeye cameo that just existed because we gotta establish Hawkeye in the movie somehow, in this world somehow, as a SHIELD agent and stuff, even though you could have just did it in Avengers, but whatever, it's there. The Destroyer armor, everything about the movie, it worked in establishing the Thor mythology for the most part and stuff. And like I said, it was actually a pretty good movie. I enjoyed that movie and stuff. The finale in the small Arizona town, and it was an alright movie. Probably the one movie though that out of all the Phase One movies, I love Avengers, I love Iron Man. Probably the one that I love way more than anything is Captain America: First Avenger, because I'm a fan of the Rocketeer. I'm pretty sure you've heard this plenty of times from a lot of people when it comes to First Avenger. Joe Johnston, Rocketeer. Joe Johnston fit perfectly for First Avenger because just that time period, Cap as a character, his relationship with Dr. Erskine, the Red Skull, everything just worked across the board. Even the finale worked with him, when he crashes and he's frozen, he wakes up 70 years later in the modern world, and, he's in confused disarray. Like, just everything worked about it from top to bottom. It's amazing, too, that the running theme with Phase 1 was the fact that the Tesseract played a huge role in certain things. It played a huge role in the arc reactor technology, especially when you look at what happens in Avengers, which I'll get to in a minute, and just the overarching technology period throughout this whole phase. Because in Iron Man and in Captain America: First Avenger, Red Skull is using the Tesseract energy to make these weapons that disappears you and all that stuff, and then the fact that on top of that, Red Skull, he's doing such research on the Tesseract, that he believes that there's a powerful person that can take control of these powers, which to me I always took that as though, I'm not gonna say he knew Thanos was gonna come, but he figured some powerful being, and he felt it was gonna be himself. Hence why he took the pre super soldier serum before he got perfected. He felt that he was powerful enough to control it, and it's funny to me because he takes control of the Tesseract, and it transports him, and the payoff is in Infinity War, which I thought was a pretty dope thing. But it was interesting too at the time that that first Avenger came out. When it happened, a lot of folks thought that either A, he got burnt up by the Tesseract, or B, he did get transported, which pretty much informed everybody it's the space stone. And like I said, it's just knowing what you know past this movie. It's just crazy. Like when you look back at it, just like, oh my God, that's where it sent them to. It sent them here. Again, the weaponing and stuff, like, spoilers for Captain Marvel, Carol's powers were kind of a byproduct of the Tesseract, and the technology that her mom was using. Basically, her mom used the Tesseract energy to come up with like a kind of like a powerful engine and such, so to speak. So you had that going. But it's like I said, it's amazing. The theme of Phase 1 was the Tesseract, and it's kind of like its power influence in the MCU as a whole and such. At least that's how I took it. But everything about Captain America: First Avenger was dope. Chris Evans pretty much made you believe that he was Steve Rogers. Howard Stark's in it. He was great. Peggy Carter and her relationship with Steve was really, you believe it. They built it up in a very natural way, and it was actually pretty awesome and cool to see. The Howling Commandos, Cap, basically, pushing war bonds, that whole sequence and stuff. It was actually, like I said, I loved it. I love this movie across the board and stuff. I think it was dope. Even the action scenes were fun for what they were and stuff. And when I finish all the Phase 2 movies, we'll talk about Winter Soldier. But I think First Avenger was just dope across the board, and they really did a phenomenal job with everything to it. And we get to Avengers. That's a movie that I like and I respect. Like, just everything about the Avengers, you start really realizing you can't believe to this day that movie happened. The fact that we got the Avengers in the movie, the fact that you have Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Black Widow, Hawkeye. Black Widow, we saw in Iron Man 2. She was serviceable in Iron Man 2, but again, she was one of those things that I felt that they were trying to do their best to like push to say, we gotta get this Avengers stuff out now, so put Black Widow in there and fit her in there. And I mean, she was fine in Iron Man 2. She did her job. She had that scene where she's kicking ass in that facility and stuff, and it was pretty fine. Like I said, Scarlett Johansson, she works as Black Widow. But in Avengers, it was nice seeing them to really expand on her even more. Her really come to realizing that she's this small person in this big world and stuff, particularly when it comes to the Hulk and stuff. The fact that her experience with the Hulk put the fear of God in her, and just the aspect of when she tells Clint like, "Yo, we've been trained for our whole life, but we never trained for this." Clint was pretty much mind controlled a good chunk of the movie. But what I thought was interesting about him even being mind controlled, it showed that he was pretty much a very effective, soldier, just across the board. I mean, the dude damn near took down the damn helicarrier, you know. And like I said, Black Widow, interrogating Loki and stuff, and duping him into thinking he had like manipulated her, and then turns out she's manipulating him. That was great. Cap and Tony seeing each other for the first time after Steve, fights Loki. That was great. You know, Thor fighting Iron Man was great. Just in terms of, and this is something that Marvel's always done. They have always done a good job of showing like the power levels to an extent. Clearly Thor can beat Iron Man, but Iron Man has certain tricks that kind of keeps him in the fight. Thor shoots a lightning bolt at him and stuff. You think that would take him out, but somehow it beefs up Stark's armor even more. And Cap, it's Cap. Even though I was not a fan of this in the suit in this movie, it was fucking horrible. I remember seeing the concept for art for the suit, and I was like, "Oh, that looks like that could be dope." And then when you see it, it's like there. And then also, it didn't help that you can tell that Chris Evans wasn't as huge as he was in First Avenger, and even when you see him in Winter Soldier and stuff. So clearly, and I think he was doing a movie at the time, so that's probably why he wasn't like in 100% like jacked and stuff like he was in the previous movie. But the movie just works, especially when you get to that like third act where they're in the city fighting, they're working together. Hulk like, "That's my secret cap. I'm always angry," and he transforms, and you just losing your shit. You get the circle, the camera panning around the team when they're landing and stuff. The hero shot. It's the movie just works across the board and really solidifying and establishing the MCU. Like, this is a movie that made $1.5 billion, and you understand and know why, because it was just something that was very unprecedented at that time. Because at any point in time, this phase one, like, Avengers was the make or break. Like, it had to be a fucking huge movie, and it was a huge damn movie. Like, that this movie was just killing it in the box office and stuff. But I would say overall, like I said, you look at phase one of the MCU, it's still fun movies to watch. Like I said, lots of lore building, lots of trial and error you could tell in these films and stuff, especially tonally through each director that got hands on these films and stuff. Like I said, Joe Johnston had the Rocketeer, nostalgia throwback feel to his movie. You had Kenneth Branagh that brought that kind of semi-Shakespearean kind of thing to Thor and stuff. Shout out to Idris Elba as Heimdall. I remember at the time people were like, "Why is there there's no Black Norseman? Who cares? It's Idris fucking Elba. You're gonna love it." You had John Favreau with the 2 Iron Man movies that he kind of put his flavor to it and stuff, and he had his feel to it. You had, I think, was it Louis Retner for The Incredible Hulk, which is kind of interesting because Edward Norton leaving that franchise, I don't know, it's weird to me because I have to sit there and imagine how his connection with the team would have been if he stayed on and stuff, where they kind of had that, kind of like closeness that Mark Ruffalo has with everybody, that camaraderie. But I thought, Edward Norton did a pretty good job as Bruce Banner, and I think, he, pretty much, Edward Norton was pretty good, and I think Mark Ruffalo did a good job of kind of carrying over some of the things that Edward Norton established for Banner, and kind of taking a little bit of those elements and then adding his own spin to it and stuff. And I think it just worked out in the grand scheme of everything. And just like I said, phase one, it's a good rewatch. If you're watching it, you kind of sit there and look at little nuggets. Again, it's knowing what you know about the future movies after phase one with Winter Soldier and everything from Captain Marvel. It's just everything in phase one just clicks even more. And like I said, this was pretty much a fun ride. So phase one, I'm done with it. And I'm onward with phase two. So if you want to keep up, I am at CJ WizGeek on Twitter. I'm gonna be doing. I've pretty much been doing live commentary on the films as I've been going on. So if you haven't been following me on where, you can follow me and kind of read up on all the live commentaries I did on the Phase 1 films and stuff. But yeah, onwards to Phase 2.